All right, gang, it's not just CNN that's watching their world fall apart. It's the infamously left-wing BBC as well. The British Broadcasting Corporation has announced that it too will be laying off hundreds of workers in an effort to cut costs in response to its declining viewership. So we're going to take a look at what's going on and what it means for the future of the BBC. Hey, gang, Dr. Steve here. I'm coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm here for a conference over the next few days, so again, forgive me if the videos come out a bit sporadically, but it is a good excuse to hit that bell and subscribe button if you haven't already done so you can get alerted of any new video content. But I did come across this very, very interesting article in the announcement by the BBC that they'll be laying off 450 employees from their news division, as well as scaling back a number of their flagship shows and services. And really, this is all part of a downscaling effort to save over £80 million by March 2022. Now, if you don't know, the BBC is a ridiculously left-wing outlet. Our British viewers never tire of complaining about the leftist perspective peddled constantly on the BBC. They're basically Britain's version of the CNN that people are forced to pay for, right? They actively promote and push all the issues favorable to globalization, and they were pushing militantly anti-Brexit propaganda. They're thoroughly in the Remainer camp. They push feminist, transgender issues and the like. And like CNN, they're also seeing a massive decline in viewership. I wonder why, right? Data from Statista.com shows that BBC viewership in the UK has fallen from over 26 million in 2012 to under 17 million today, which is a whopping 35% drop in viewership in the last 6 years. BBC Radio 2 has reported a loss of 1 million viewers since 2018. As for BBC One, they've begun to hemorrhage viewers from the coveted 16 to 34-year-old demographic, falling by almost 4% over the last 3 years. And it seems members of every race and ethnicity are turning off BBC. Among minority viewers, they've dropped by 5% in the course of 3 years, and 1% of white viewers during the same period. So as you probably guessed, the median age of a BBC viewer is rising from 56 years old a few years back to now 60 years old. Channel 4 has experienced double-digit declines in ratings. Now, if you're not familiar, Britain, if I recall, has four, I believe, public broadcasting companies like BBC One, BBC Two. I think there's TV or ITV. There's Channel 4. Now, you probably know of Channel 4, and this is why I was chuckling, because of the infamous interview with Jordan Peterson that went viral. He was being interviewed by that snarky feminist Kathy Newman. Do you remember? Do you remember, Kathy? So what you're really saying, Newman? I mean, that's Channel 4, okay? Their ratings have been declining by double digits as well. But you know, it gets worse. Don't you love it when it gets worse? It's not just the ratings decline. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's threatening to allow Brits to opt out of paying the BBC license fee. In Britain, in order to have a television service, you have to pay a fee, part of which goes to funding the BBC. Boris has come out and said, look, maybe at one time that made sense, but now you're all just a bunch of left-wing activists disguised as journalists. You're just a bunch of left-wing nuts. So why should conservative Brits be forced to pay for and financially support your nonsense? So the upcoming negotiations with the government promise to be very, very, very difficult and disadvantageous for the BBC, precisely because Boris has such a massive political mandate given that landslide victory back in December. So Boris can pretty much do whatever he wants at this point, and he definitely seems to have the license fee in his target range right now. The BBC also in many respects is outdated. It's finding it very difficult to compete with Netflix and Apple and Hulu and all these other streaming services that have access to extraordinarily detailed user data, so they know exactly what their audiences want. And so what seems to be going on here is that the BBC is trying to go more and more online. It's internetizing itself, we might say. It's putting so much of its effort now into becoming competitive in the world of social media and online news. which of course means that the license fee is being rendered absolutely irrelevant. You see, what the BBC is realizing is the same thing all the network news outlets are realizing. The world has changed from a largely institutionally specific information system to now what's called a network society that spreads out information through seemingly endless options. I like to illustrate this with the post office and how the post office has largely been replaced with digital email. So here in the States, we actually refer to the post office as snail mail, right? I mean, we'll still use it, on occasion, but nowhere near as much as we used to. And this is, of course, because of the rise of email and Skype and text messaging, and all of which allow us to bypass the old bureaucratic delivery system, right? The centralized delivery system. And the same thing's going on here. Brits used to have to go to BBC to get their information, but now with the network society arising, with digital information, they can quite literally go anywhere, right? So that the BBC then comes across as increasingly Jurassic and outdated. And this is what everyone's finding out. And some of them are finding out the hard way, like CNN. I mean, the ratings for CNN simply could not be more catastrophic. I mean, I think in the end, they're kept afloat simply because they're getting a percentage of cable television subscriptions that are paid for by people, the vast majority of which never watch CNN. And the airport monopoly that they've had for the last 20 years, which is coming to an end, thankfully, right? We did a video on that. You'll definitely want to check out by clicking on the link. I'll link it down below for you as well in the pinned comments section. Nothing demonstrated the increasing irrelevance more of the BBC than the whole Tommy Robinson arrest and imprisonment fiasco. If you remember, the judge involved in Tommy Robinson's hearing slapped a reporting ban on the whole incident, from his arrest to his court appearance all the way to his imprisonment. And so news outlets in the UK, most especially the BBC, began removing their reporting on Tommy from their websites to comply with that order. And here in the States, Fox News reported that news sources from Britain were speaking to them only on the condition of anonymity out of fear that they would be arrested for contempt. I mean, this whole thing was just insane. But what we predicted was that the old institutional news outlets could no longer contain the information that got out there. And so Brits found themselves going to all sorts of news sites, particularly YouTube, to get the latest on Tommy that they couldn't get from their mainstream media. So this is all to say that I think the days of the dominance of mainstream media have indeed come to an end. And layoffs are simply another indicator that their influence over public opinion is largely over. All right, guys, so I have to go back to this conference, but before you go, I just posted a great video on how impeachment is destroying Trump derangement syndrome. You're going to absolutely love it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.